Hello, hello, and welcome to another edition of Wander and Muse, the podcast for creatives to share their stories and their projects. Today's creative is Laura Pendleton-Miller, who's the board president for the Blue Lotus Artists Collective, also known as BLAC. Go ahead and tell everyone a little bit about BLAC.
Hi, Heather.
Hi.
I love to share the story about, I'm going to start with it being Blue Lotus. I love that the acronym shortens it to BLAC, but Blue Lotus was chosen specifically by one of the artists because it's a flower that's really important in Africa, and it is a flower that grows out of muck into great beauty, and we felt that that sort of symbolizes for us how we feel in our society.
Right.
So we take all the adversity and turn it into lemonade, I guess.
Exactly.
So the gallery concept was not the original plan. There was a group of us who got together just specifically with the issue of how can we help Black artists to get more visibility.
Definitely.
And that's really all we planned to do. What are some of the ideas? Who can we talk to as active community volunteers? And that was just last year in 22.
This all happened so quickly. I love it. You have some follow through.
It happened. Actually, I feel like the project went on steroids once it happened. So over the course of several months, we would get back together, and the group kept growing. It started out with 6 people.
Okay.
And by the time we met again, there were some people who said they'd love to be part of the conversation. And then people started calling me saying, I heard you had this meeting, you know, and I wasn't invited. And I was like, wait, people are calling, asking to be invited to a meeting?
Right.
I'm trying to figure out how to do fewer meetings. So by the time we got into the summer, we really were having anywhere, 16, 20, 22 people. We had people who were there from Tucson Museum of Art.
That's fantastic.
MOCA, UAMA.
Oh, good.
I mean, it was really a fun and interesting group of people who all seemed to be very interested. The other thing that was funny for me was that a lot of times when you have an idea, and you start throwing it out to different people, just talking about what you're thinking about doing, you always have some people who want to tell you why it won't work.
Oh, that's so true, isn't it?
It always.
Yeah.
But not on this one.
I love it.
There was no one who said, that's a terrible idea. This is why it won't work. There are no Black people in Tucson,
There are too. Come on.
But no, but it was really interesting that no one wanted to talk about what the obstacles were. Everybody just joined in that they thought it was a great idea.
Love it. And power in numbers too, when you have all these people who are engaged and want it to work.
Yeah, it was like everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
What can we do? How can we make this work?
What were the first steps?
Okay, well,
beyond the meetings, then what?
Okay, so the first steps were really not what I would have thought would be the first steps.
Okay.
So at the point that we decided, and it was really sort of a reaction to doing some traveling to LA, Chicago, some other places, and trying to figure out what happened with Black artists there.
Okay.
And one thing I found, even in a place like Los Angeles, nothing really happened for Black artists until the Davis brothers, who were Black artists, took it into their own hands and started a thing called the Brockman Gallery.
Okay.
And they thought,
and what year was
this? Was in the, now you're going to ask me something.
I mean, was it 10 years ago, 30
No,
years
it was
ago?
longer than that. It was probably, if memory serves me, it was in the 80s.
Okay.
So they were trying to get their work shown. They were getting nowhere. So they decided, we're going to open a gallery ourselves to show our work and work of other Black artists. Okay. Their gallery wound up becoming like the incubator for how Black artists got into other galleries and into museum shows in LA. So get back here, we start talking about that. And then at one point, one of the artists said, why do we keep waiting for them to want us? And we were like, that's a really good point. And even if we convince people the way museums and galleries schedule, it would be years before we would see any fruit.
That's a good point.
Of that. So at that point, we just all, it's like the light bulbs went off all over the room. And we said, all right, we're doing this. So we thought, okay, we'll start working on it and figure out what the pieces are that we have to do. At that point, I ran into an old friend at the racket club. I was playing tennis. He was swimming. What are you up to? Oh, what are you up to? So he starts talking about a project that he's doing, a real estate project, and that he was interested in doing some artist live workspace. So I told him what we were doing, and we said, well, we should talk. And we did, and we looked at what he was doing. And it was sort of the fact that he had something that might work that made us start thinking, well, one of the things we need to do is find out what's out there.
Right.
That might be a good gallery space.
Exactly.
That we could use, and then start to figure out what things cost and all that kind of stuff, and put together a budget. So we were sitting one day, Joanne, Stuhr, and I at the MOCA having lunch. And she said to me, well, I need to go pick up a painting over, at my storage. Do you want to go with me? And I did. And it was at 1 East Congress.
Okay.
And she said, the ground floor is empty. You want to see it? So I looked at it. She said, would this be a good gallery space?
Right.
I said, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The corner of Stone and Congress, a good gallery space. And so she said, well, how about if I make an appointment for us to talk to Mike Kasser about the space and about what we're doing, and see if there's any synergy there.
Sure.
So at this point, I mean, really, we've just
You're
decided
just
we're going to do this.
Right.
And now we're just going to look and see what's out there, so we can start to figure out how to build a budget. So Joanne and Mary Okoye and I went off and met with Mike Kasser and told him about this embryonic idea that we had. And he said, I think that sounds magnificent.
Fantastic.
I think that would be a great use of some space.
Yeah.
You need to convince my CFO and my project manager. I'll have them come down. They did. And then they loved the idea too, told us a few things that they wanted us to put together for them to have to present. And I actually remember finishing that from the road, because I was going on this trip, but wanted to see how, that would go. Anyway, I was on the trip when he sent back and said, yeah, we want to work with you and provide you with space.
I love it.
So then we knew we were going to have a space. They then talked to us about a few different spaces that they had that might work.
Right.
And what some of the pros and cons were of some of those spaces. And all things considered, we thought the space at Stone and Pennington would serve our needs really well. And they were really just thrilled to work with us on that. So it was sort of, the project went on steroids, because now we have a space. I guess we're doing this.
Right. And so specifically, the address is 15 East Pennington.
Correct.
And that is, for those of you who know City High School, it is immediately west of there, basically.
That's correct.
Yeah. And when you had I guess your second exhibit, soft opening, and you closed off the street there at Pennington, that was just such a great vibe. And how cool to be able to close off the street and expand it out and have the food trucks and whatnot.
Exactly. And that was one of the reasons why we thought that Pennington might be a better spot for us than Congress.
Right.
We have several different goals with what we're doing. The first, of course, was just to give more visibility to Black artists, and in many cases, emerging artists who are not having the benefit of being seen anywhere.
Right.
But we also wanted to bring in some really high quality established Black artists that otherwise might not come to Tucson.
Oh, right.
And we wanted to create teachable moments, because a lot of the artists are telling stories.
Definitely.
And these are what we feel are important stories that are not being told in school.
Exactly.
And especially not now in our current climate. I mean, we only had a little nugget in history anyway.
Right.
And now they don't even want that.
Exactly.
Now they just want to talk about the benefits to us of slavery.
Oh my goodness.
All the things we got to learn. But anyway, the current show really combines a lot of the things that we wanted to do, because we have one artist who is an emerging artist, but I mean, her star is really rising rapidly, and that's Nikesha from Taos, New Mexico. The other is an established, well-known, probably one of the top Harlem Renaissance artists, and that's Jacob Lawrence, and we have his John Brown series. Right. So in both of these, so we have an established artist, we have an emerging artist, and both of them are telling stories with their works. In the case of Jacob Lawrence, he is telling the story of the abolitionist John Brown. So it's a 22-piece series, and if you follow it in the correct order, which we try to tell people, going from 1 to 22, it does tell the story of John Brown, from his inspiration to try to abolish slavery through to his demise. Right. with Nikesha Breeze, the series that we have within the skin is her initial work of visual art. Prior to that, she was a performance artist and a dancer.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
So hers
what a
is
talent.
Hers is a really interesting story because she started doing these paintings at a time when she was working on her personal genealogy.
Interesting.
And she found out a number of things, one of which might be really interesting to you and to other people listening, because it was to me. She found out that her ancestry went back to a Black community in southern New Mexico called Blackdom.
Interesting.
And 1902, a family, and I believe in this, I might not be accurate here in terms of my memory, but I believe originally from Florida, traveled and settled this town, sent word back that it was a good and a safe place to be. And people came and followed, and they built a thriving community with school and bank in 1902.
Wow.
But by 1922, it was gone. And when I read about that on her website, and I started reading up on Blackdom and, well, what happened? Where did they go and why and all of that? And I was finding things that sort of alluded to the fact that the community fell apart because of consecutive years of drought. But in meeting and talking to Nikesha, the story that I found was that it was a farming community, and they had wells, but they found that they needed to dig new wells to get properly into the aquifer. And when they went to the state to get the permits to do that, they were not granted their permits at a time when oil had been found on that land. So it winds up being one of those other interesting kinds of stories of how you move people, or allow people to be someplace that you think is nothing. Right. But as soon as it becomes something, you want it back.
Go. Yeah. My goodness.
But during that period of her looking at her own ancestry, she said she kept having dreams and visions that were coming to her. And she then felt like the ancestors went out, you know?
I love that.
So,
that gave me the cool chills.
So she went to get canvas to do these pieces, and was really expensive. So she decided to go to junkyards and find these old closet doors that she then sanded down and used it for the project.
Which I love, because I love found object artwork anyway. And then there's even more symbolism with that.
Exactly. I feel the same thing. It's the whole thing of recycling and using things that are usable, because I'm also talking to another artist we're going to have in the future who says that, you know, she does everything from found objects because our society likes to throw away useful things, including Black people. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so the fact that she winds up doing these pieces on closet doors in a place where we have a closeted history, I thought just did add that dimension.
And the way they were displayed, how they were hung.
Yes. Yes.
That was what got me.
And that's another part of that I thought was really amazing. So she said when she started doing the project, she had no background. So even on the first image, which is the one that's called The Grandmother, she used her own body to trace the outline. And she lived with that piece really almost as an outline for a long time. And that piece, she felt, kind of birthed the other pieces. Which also explains the red on the hands of the grandmother in that image. And then she came back last to the grandmother.
Which is cool. That full circle of it too is really interesting.
Yes. So, and I hope that when she hears this, that I have really retold the story as well as she told it to me. So then she thinks, well, maybe I should take an art class.
After she's made this amazing, brilliant.
Right.
Wow.
So the instructor's like, wow, your work's really good. Do you have anything I can see? So she took her home to her studio, and the instructor was just blown away by this series. Came back to Nikesha and said, I have a show for you at the Harwood Museum of these pieces.
Goodness.
At that point, all the pieces were done except the triptych that's see no more, hear no more, speak no more. So the other pieces were in the show at the Harwood. They were also displayed up against the wall, so you didn't have the benefit of seeing the work, the poetry on the back, or having the advantage of them being displayed the way they are now.
Right.
So when I met Nikesha, and was talking to her about wanting to do something with her, she said to me, I always wanted to have all the pieces united in one place, and I always dreamed of having them shown the way I envisioned them, being suspended from the ceiling or hung, which I think, as you said, also with the closet doors, adds just another dimension to the work itself.
Wow. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about yourself personally. I'm curious how you started becoming more interested in artwork, because your career has been in financial advising, correct? So tell me a little bit more about that.
As a teenager, I babysat for a family that were art collectors. Oh, going to their house was like going to a gallery.
Nice.
Yeah, and I was just so amazed by that. And then as time went on with my babysitting for them, because I was fascinated by that, they started inviting me to go to openings and things like that with them.
How cool.
So by the time I went to college in DC, it was one of the things that I loved to do on the side was go visit galleries and museums. And I was in Washington, D.C.
DC, you can't get better than that.
Right, where everything, you have access to so much, and it's free.
Yeah.
And so I want to tell you a fun story. Well, fun for me anyway. So there was this one gallery in Georgetown that was run by these two women. And I started going in there, so I had gotten to know them a bit. So they knew I'm just a student, but they started inviting me to their openings and other things like that. So I went to this one opening, and there was this painting that I just fell in love with. And it was a painting of this woman sitting on a bench looking like she was just trying to figure out the whole world around her. So every time I would go down to the Smithsonian or anything from Georgetown, you caught the bus down on Wisconsin Avenue, which was near the gallery. So either on the way down or on the way back, I would stop to visit my painting.
I love that.
So one day I was coming back and was like, oh, I'll stop and visit my painting. And I wound up with this sense of dread that I was going to get there and it was going to be gone. Oh. That someone was going to have bought it and it would be gone. And I got there and it wasn't. I told these two women that story, and they looked at me and they said, how much could you pay?
Oh my gosh.
And I said, $10 a month. And they took it off the wall and handed it to me.
Oh my gosh.
And so every month I went down and gave them their $10 until a couple years later when I paid for it.
Wow.
So that was
my fantastic
my first original piece of art. Prior to that, I had some posters and prints that I bought in little print shops and stuff like that. But that was my first. And so it's been 40 years of collecting art. Some of the other, and that was also during the time or near the time that I started coming out to the Southwest. Again, with that same family, the first time I came to the Southwest, I came on a summer trip with them as a babysitter. And we mostly spent time in museums and galleries, and we were in Taos and Santa Fe and all of that. And there, coming out here, I fell in love with landscapes because the colors were so much more vibrant than we see back east.
Yeah.
So then I started collecting mostly landscapes. Then I moved here, and in moving here, I started seeing more artwork by Native Americans, Mexican American artists. So I started collecting some things like Luis Jimenez, and also doing some Allan and Dan Naminga. And then I just got to a point not that long ago, but what about my culture? But as you're going in and out of a lot of galleries, you just weren't
not
seeing that much. So it was slow, and I call it sort of the third leg of what I started doing. But that's now primarily what I've been doing.
Love it. And so it sounds like you have had such incredible momentum with the Blue Artists Collective. And so talk more about what's your vision now, because so far everything's come to fruition. So what's next, right?
I know, it's actually kind of crazy, because once we knew that we had the gallery and we thought, okay, it takes time to plan. Well, first of all, there were some things that needed to be done. Not a lot. But lighting,
fresh coat of paint.
Lighting was real important.
Lighting is very important.
And really, one of the biggest hurdles that we had was finding an electrician to do our lighting then. So we got the painting and the cleanup, and really the previous incarnation of that space had been as a dance studio. So the walls in the big room were all mirrors. But Mike Kasser was very gracious and generous in getting that done, or cut out, because you couldn't just take it down, cut out and re-drywalled for us. So the main thing was doing the cleaning, the lighting, the painting. And so we thought planning a grand opening takes time, but now we have this space. We don't want to waste it. So we figured out doing this initial show with artists that we were all familiar with, that 4 of whom were from Tucson, 2 from Phoenix, 1 from Seattle, and 1 from Burkina Faso. And so that was our initial show, and we did a soft opening on March 25th of that show, and we were blown away by the reception of that show. We were like, fantastic. And everyone kept saying, "This is your soft opening?" Right. So, wow. But we just wanted,
meant to be. It is so meant to be. It's so needed.
Yes, yes. So that was the soft opening. We were very happy with that. The artists were real thrilled with the publicity that we got around that. We wound up with an article in, well, the Tucson Weekly, Tucson Lifestyle Magazine, Arizona Luminaria did a piece on us. Great. And then Arizona Illustrated came and interviewed us about the gallery. So the artists were really pleased to get that kind of initial response. Right out of the gate. And at the same time, then we were planning for this show. And once I knew that we had an agreement with Nikesha Breeze, and we were thinking about what would pair well with that. And I had sort of made a list along with Joanne Stuhr and some input from some other people of some of the things that we would like to do. And of those things that were on that list, the Jacob Lawrence was plan A. Because we thought that the two would pair really, really well together. But we also had the challenge of, how do we get a museum in central Pennsylvania to say yes to a startup little gallery out in Tucson, Arizona? So anyway, we worked on it, and they came back to us and said that they would be thrilled to work with an organization with a mission like ours, and to have the pieces out and have them be more visible. So that's how we got there.
Wait, wasn't there more to that story though? About where you first found the artwork?
Oh, well, there was the first time I saw the artwork, and how I knew that it was there. I knew that they had that collection because 40-something years ago, I was in one of their museums. They have 3 sites, or do they have 4 now? They have one in Crescent, Pennsylvania, Altoona, Pennsylvania, Johnstown. There might actually be a 4th. I was in the one that was in Crescent, Pennsylvania, and I saw the pieces in the stairwell.
That's crazy.
So I knew they had the pieces.
The stairwell.
I'm pretty sure that in the subsequent years they have shown it otherwise, but but I remember thinking I saw those pieces, and Jacob Lawrence is absolutely one of my favorite artists. I remember when I first saw his Great Migration series. It was at the Phillips in DC, and they had the entire series, which is like 50-something pieces.
Oh, wow.
And I remember thinking, wow, talk about a story of talking about the migration of Black people from the South to the North in pursuit of jobs. And I was just blown away by his work, to the point where even one of my girlfriends who had the complete series of Jacob Lawrence's work and a signed edition of these 2 books, and had given me that for Christmas. So I said to her, "Did you ever think that when you gave me this book that I would wind up
It's amazing where life
Lawrence
will lead. Twists and turns, and then ta-da.
So that's where the idea, that's how that wound up on the list, was that I had seen it, knew that it was there, and we're just grateful, really grateful that they liked our vision and wanted to work with us on that.
Now, is everything for sale or no? Because they're collections.
Yes.
And so how do you get your funding?
So here's the other thing. We're kind of a hybrid. Because our part of our mission being the stories that we want to tell, that sometimes these stories, we hope, are going to come from other places. They're going to come from collections. They're going to come from museums. So right now, the show that we have that has 31 pieces in it, there are only 3 pieces that are for sale.
Gotcha.
You know, and that's Nikesha's See No More, Hear No More, Speak No More triptych. That is for sale.
Gotcha.
The other pieces in her series are on loan from a collector. And then, of course, the John Brown series is on loan from the Southern Alleghenies Museum of Art.
Gotcha.
we are a nonprofit. Our money is coming from donations.
Fantastic.
And in the future, we hope donations and grants. And this is where I get to announce that yesterday I picked up the letter saying that our nonprofit status has been approved by the IRS.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So that's great news. In the meantime, MOCA has been very nice in being our fiscal sponsor so that people could donate to them and designate it to come to us.
Fantastic.
But life is simpler and easier when you have your own status. And so
Definitely.
now we have our own status.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so for upcoming shows and or day in, day out gallery needs, are you looking for volunteers? And
we're looking for volunteers. We're looking for money.
So how should people contact you?
On our website, bluelotusartistscollective.com. There is a place for them to go in and say they'd like to be a volunteer.
Perfect.
There's also a button for them to donate. There's an email address. There's a phone number. I'm getting a lot of people who will just call me or email and say, that they want to come and help, or they want to come and bring a group.
Right.
They have people who are interested. How do I set up a tour for, in one case, it was a woman who wanted to bring her staff. They worked downtown and wanted to bring the staff.
That's a great idea.
At lunchtime.
Or a school's history class.
Exactly. We want to do more school stuff. And that's the other thing. We want to be doing more educational stuff. So we're working on where do we now write grants, or where do we get funding to do student programming. Right. We want to have Saturdays during the school year that we're doing programs with kids. We want to have summer programs for kids. I've already talked to some of the artists that we're working with about whether or not they would be interested and willing to teach. And what we're hoping is to raise the money for that so that the kids aren't paying. That we raise the money, pay the artist. We staff everything but with volunteers.
That's fantastic.
So no paid staff at this point. I'm hoping in a dream budget to get to at least having one staff person who would be responsible for overseeing all these details, because it does get challenging with only volunteers to make sure that we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's and not missing opportunities. We're looking at a lot of collaborations. There are a lot of people who are talking about the kinds of things they want to do with us. We're already working on a collaboration with Artemisia Museum down in Bisbee that we're going to do in February. We've been talking to MOCA about what kinds of things we might be able to do with them, where we might be doing something where we need additional space or our space isn't big enough.
True.
Same thing with UAMA, Tucson Museum of Art.
You're on it.
We're getting people who are saying yes, that they want to work with us. I've sent out some proposals to a couple major galleries, international galleries, about collaborations we'd like them to do with us. They haven't agreed yet, but they also haven't said no yet. And I'm hoping the fact that a museum like Southern Alleghenies being willing to work with us might help give us credibility, in working with these other places.
Wow. So. I mean, you are just getting going and you've already made such a positive impact.
Thank you. We have, as a board, and I think as in with the artists that we've been working with, all been very pleased with the start. And you're right, it's like, okay, now we just have to really work hard at keeping that momentum going. And
but
keeping
you
that
will.
quality
It's just going
going.
to build and build. So, wow. Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Let's see.
The current exhibit goes until January
31st.
Okay.
Oh, and I do want to indicate that we do now, thanks to volunteers, have regular hours, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 12 to 6, Sunday, 12 to 3, and we are also still available by appointment. Okay. So if you can't make those hours or you have a specific group that you want to bring at some other time, you simply contact us through either the email or the phone number, and we will make it work.
Perfect. And again, the website is Blue Lotus Artists, with plural, collective.com.
Correct.
So that's where people can go to donate, to volunteer, to contact you.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you for your contribution to the community. It's clearly needed. So thank you.
And thanks for having us.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Take care.
Okay.
And to all the listeners, thanks so much for tuning in today. Head over to wanderandmuse.world to take a look at some past episodes. You are bound to learn something new and feel inspired. Go out and create something today.